If your GPS dies in Oregon, do not take the old road. Do not stop where the trees lean together and the map turns gray. Because out there, a church with no steeple will tug your wrist toward a bell no one can see, and it will ring you like an instrument until your teeth sing back. Farther on, a lonely platform waits for a train made of shadow and breath. A white glove will find your name already printed, and the only way out is to write someone else in. And in the high country, a quiet house smolders in winter, folding a quilt around a shape it's been waiting to fit since 1998. You think these are legends. They are schedules, appointments. The living are the ones who answer. Stay with me. Keep the volume up. Tell yourself this is just a story while the glasses in your kitchen start to chime. When you hear the polite whistle in the walls, don't turn your head. It's already boarding, and it knows your stop. If you've ever taken the Wolf Creek exit off I-5 and trusted your GPS to shave 10 minutes off your time, then you know how fast a sunny afternoon can turn into a wet green tunnel of trees and silence. I used to laugh at haunted town signs. That changed the night I heard a bell in Golden, a bell that people say doesn't exist. It was October, a week after my grandmother's funeral. I was driving north alone past that stretch where the lane lines shine like fish bones in the rain. A wreck closed the freeway. My map rerouted me onto a thin gray line, Coyote Creek Road, the kind that makes you think it's fine, it's Oregon, everywhere goes somewhere. I stopped for gas at a tiny store near Wolf Creek Inn. The woman at the counter watched the rain slick the window and said, "You're headed the wrong way for daylight." I laughed. She didn't. "Don't stop in Golden after dark," she added, like she was telling me to grab my receipt. "They call the living with the bell." "Whose bell?" I asked, trying to keep it light. She looked at me like I hadn't heard her right the first time. "Exactly." The road swallowed my cell signal 2 minutes later. Fir and cedar leaned in on both sides. The shoulders went spongy and green with moss. I rolled past blackberry hedges and old fence posts that had collapsed into the earth. The rain fell in a straight gray sheet, turning the brush into shivering shadows. My wipers squealed. The forest had that wet metallic smell like a coin pressed to your tongue. The Golden site came up without warning, just a wooden sign and a gravel loop. A church, a meeting hall, a couple of cabins. They looked like toys someone had forgotten in the rain. It was too quiet. Even the creek that ran somewhere out of sight sounded like it was hiding. I told myself the detour could spare me the traffic and I could stretch my legs for 5 minutes. That was all. The church door was propped open with a smooth river rock. I pushed it with 2 fingers. The hinges cried. Inside, my breath made steam in the cold air. The floorboards wobbled under my boots. You could feel the whole frame of the place breathe. Pews sat in tidy rows like teeth, worn dark by hands and backs that were long gone. A hymn board on the wall showed numbers in crooked white tiles. There was a Bible on the pulpit, bloated with moisture like someone had drowned it and laid it out to dry. I stood there and listened to the rain clatter on the roof and soften. Then I realized the roof had gone quiet, but something else hadn't. A faint sound, metal touching metal from somewhere above the ceiling. Not a creak, not the wind. A bell sound, but too thin, like the last ring inside a glass after you stop it with your palm. There isn't a bell here, I thought. I remembered the cashier's flat stare. They call the living with the bell. A little length of rope dangled from a hole in the ceiling near the back, frayed and stained like it had been dragged through mud. It rocked on its own, slow as breathing. I told myself the draft had it. I told myself a lot of things at once. "Hello," my voice sounded swallowed. It came back to me small. I saw movement in the wavy glass of a side window, a shape in old fabric, a woman's thin shoulder. I turned so fast I knocked my hip on a pew. Empty. Only the doorway black with rain. Only the forest. Only the smell of wet wood and old paper. Cold slid down between my shoulder blades. A drop of water fell from the ceiling and hit my wrist the way a finger would tap. The rope knocked against my sleeve. When I reached out, only to stop it moving. The fibers twined my skin like hair and tightened. Something stepped into the aisle behind me, slow, like it had stiff knees from too long a sit. I felt the air on the back of my neck change, the way it does when someone tall blocks a doorway. "Late again," a man whispered, almost inside my ear. The rope jerked, burned my wrist, and pulled upward. My boots scraped the aisle. I caught the back of a pew with my free hand and heard my shoulder pop like a knuckle. The rope dug deeper, greasy with old damp, and my arm went numb from the fingers up. The breath at my ear moved again, slow and patient. "Late again," the man whispered. The floor didn't feel steady anymore. The whole church listed, timbers breathing in and out. The hymn numbers on the board shuffled all by themselves with the sticky sound of wet playing cards. A cold draft ran down from the ceiling hole, not wind, but the kind of cold you get when a freezer door opens in the dark. I looked up. There was no bell, just a splintered black hatch in a shape like a throat. The rope throbbed around my wrist, and that thin sound I'd heard before swelled into a bell, but wrong. It didn't come from the rafters. It rang inside me, little tremors in the bones of my forearm, the meat of my shoulder, my ribs, until my back teeth clicked together. The pew I was clinging to creaked and walked an inch across the floor like my weight wasn't mine anymore. "Stop," I said. "Please stop." "Don't keep them waiting," the voice said, not unkind. "We call the living, they come, that is the way." A change fell over the room, like someone turned a dial and brought in a different channel. The empty pews weren't empty. Water-dark coats, hats that dripped without making a sound, faces too clean, too flat like rain had rubbed the edges off. A woman near the aisle, the same thin shoulder I'd seen in the glass, held a wrapped bundle that leaked river water. Every one of them watched me with that mild, church-gentle look that still says you know better. I yanked at the rope. It only climbed. Desperate, I fumbled my car key from my pocket and sawed. The fibers were stubborn as hair. I cut skin before I cut anything else. The bell in my bones climbed a note. For a second I thought my heart would hit it too and go out through my mouth. The knot gave. I dropped, landing hard on the aisle runner. The congregation flickered like gnats over a puddle. The rope snapped back through the ceiling and vanished, leaving nothing but a square of darker dark. The church was empty again. The Bible on the pulpit breathed a page and went still. Then the bell rang outside, clear and bright, the way iron sounds on cold air. I ran. Rain slapped my face. The clearing had shifted in some small way I couldn't name. The cabins had a glow inside like kerosene, but when I looked through the windows there were only reflections of the rain, and people stood in the gravel, 3 of them. A woman in bright running shoes, a teenage boy with a skateboard tucked under his arm, an older man in a green duck's hoodie, blinking like someone had woken him. "Do you hear it?" the woman asked me. It sounded like home. They all had raw red rings around their wrists. The meeting hall door swung open on its own. A tall man stood just inside, suit too black for the rain, gloves pale as cut fat. His eyes were the color of wet nails. He held that swollen Bible like it weighed nothing. Names swam across a page as the bell tolled again, ink blooming in water. "Pull," he said, and lifted his chin at me. My wrist throbbed in answer, as if the rope was still there, as if there was rope in me now. "I'm not doing this," I said. My voice shook like it belonged to the bell. He didn't move. Someone always rings. If no hand will do, the tether will. The teen looked straight at me. "You're late." I ran for my car. It started on the first try like a prayer coming true, and I didn't look back until the highway ate my mirrors. I drove until the rain turned to a mist that tasted like pennies, and there were other headlights again. The rope burn didn't heal. It darkened, a band that never washed off. 2 nights later at 2:17 a.m., every glass in my kitchen chimed. Not loud, just that thin, polite bell. My arm lifted off the bed by itself to the height of a pole. I keep the TV on now to drown it out, but some nights the screen goes black and shows me only the church door, open to rain, and the names in watersick ink. Last week, I saw the duck's hoodie on a missing person post. The boy too, and the runner. The bell rang once in my living room. The band on my wrist pulsed, and my fingers curled like they remembered a rope. It isn't calling me back to Golden. It's ringing through me, wherever I am. If you've never been to Friend, let me paint it. Thin blacktop slicing through wheat, yellow hills breathing under a wide sky, and way out there, a few old buildings sitting like teeth in a jaw that's forgotten how to chew. It was supposed to be a quick, harmless stop, just me, my camera, and the last daylight of August. I'd read that Friend used to be the end of a railroad, the terminus. No rails left now, just a platform and a sign. I turned off from Doofer and followed a road that rolled like a ribbon. Grasshoppers pinged off my fender. Dust rose behind me like a pet following clothes. By the time I parked beside the old schoolhouse, the air had that hot straw smell you taste more than breathe. The store across the way had a porch sagging on one corner, and beyond it, a raised stretch of wood, the platform. Creosote black soaked into boards older than my grandparents. I stepped up. The boards gave a long, tired sigh under my boots. The wheat made a dry sound as the wind brushed across it, like a voice telling me to listen. No rails, no ties, only a pale cut of earth where the line used to run, straight as a rule, arrowing off into heat shake. But the telephone wires buzzed like a tuning fork. The sound crawled up the back of my neck and lifted the hair there. It felt like the way a train feels before you know you're hearing it. Vibration first, then sound, then the thing itself. I wasn't alone. That was my first clear thought. Not a person I could see, just the sense of being watched by someone patient. Someone who'd been waiting so long that waiting had turned into what they were. Inside the old store, the counter still stood, mason jars and mouse nests. On the wall behind, a blackboard gray with dust. I wiped a sleeve across it. Faint chalk letters bloomed: Friend, southbound, last platform. Beneath it, a time. 9:17. The chalk had that smear that means years, decades, not days. My phone had no bars, but the clock still worked. 8:51 p.m. Spooky, I said out loud to make a joke of it. My voice sounded small and dry. I took a picture of the chalkboard anyway. It felt like proof against something I couldn't name. Proof never helps, but we all try. Back on the platform, the air had cooled. The wind had swung. The wheat no longer hissed. It stood tall and listened with me. I stared down the old grade. Heat haze danced. Far off, dust lifted from the ground in a long, low line like a thing running fast just under the surface. A whistle came thin on the air. Not a truck, not a modern horn. A high, aching whistle that curved up and hung there, trembling as if it had to find me. The wires sang with it. The boards under my feet picked up a tremor and passed it up through my legs. I tasted metal. A smell moved in: hot oil, old smoke, wet iron, the ghost of steam. Dark slid across the platform, long and rectangular, as if a shadow from something tall and moving had fallen over it. I looked left. The wheat bent all at once in a neat long wave and sprang back like a wake. Something huge had just gone by on nothing. Friend, a man's voice called, calm and businesslike. The kind of voice that never shouts because it knows you'll listen. Friend, last stop. A figure stood at the edge of the platform where no rails were. Tall, cap low, coat too dark for the fading light. I couldn't see his face. Only his hands, white-gloved, clean as an operating room. Ticket, he said, like he'd said it 1,000 times to 1,000 people who never argued. I don't have one, I told the air where his face should be. You do, he said. He lifted one white hand and pointed at my chest like a teacher. Left pocket. I slid my hand into my left jacket pocket. My fingers touched stiff cardboard, old and damp like it had been in water and fire both. It was punched with neat little holes, and it had my full name printed across it in tiny, perfect letters. The whistle lifted again. On time, the man said, and the hand I didn't see closed cool around my wrist and tugged me forward, out over nothing, toward a door that wasn't there. The hand closed cool around my wrist and tugged. My boot swung over empty air and found a step that shouldn't have been there. Cold pressed into my ears like I'd gone under in a deep pool. A rectangle of darker dark opened, and I stumbled into a train car lit by weak yellow bulbs that hummed to themselves. The air inside smelled like wet wool, hot oil, and something sweet gone bad. Seats lined both sides, the old kind with high backs and a shine where shoulders had polished them. People sat in some of them. Not many. Their clothes felt out of time in a way that didn't belong to any one year. Work coats, Sunday dresses, a boy in a sweater with a stitched train on the chest. Every face was turned forward, patient, hands folded like they were waiting for a thing that never truly ends. "Ticket," the conductor said again. He didn't have a face I could keep in focus. Just the cap, the smooth jaw, and the white gloves, bright as bone. I handed him the card. He opened a little punch that had teeth like a bite. When he pressed it through the cardboard, a cold pinprick went through my chest at the same spot. I gasped and clutched myself. When I looked down, there was no blood, only the shape of the punch pressed into my skin from the inside. "Southbound," he said, "on time." The car moved without moving. The floor under me hummed and quivered like a living thing. Outside the windows, it wasn't night or day. It was a thin, gray in-between where things slid past that didn't make sense. Water running backward uphill, a barn sagging upright, a shape like a deer but too tall in the middle, standing and watching our shadow pass. Across from me, the boy with the stitched train was staring. He grinned in a way that made my teeth hurt. "End of the line," he said. "Friend." "Where does it go?" I asked, and my voice came out thin. "It doesn't," he said. "It stops." The conductor walked the aisle without his shoes sounding on anything. He checked his pocket watch. The second hand hopped, slow and stubborn. 9:17. The car breathed. The lights dimmed, then flared like something drawing a very tired breath. "We arrive," he said, and for the first time his voice had warmth in it, as if arriving was a kindness. "Home." He tilted his head toward the window. My stomach fell. Outside, through the gray, I saw my own street, my own porch light throwing a yellow circle on the step. The maple tree that drops red leaves in the first week of October. The thin crack in the driveway I'd been meaning to fill. My front door was open a few inches. "No," I said, standing. "I'm not getting off." "Schedule," he said quietly. "There is no back after last platform." "Then take me back to friend," I said. "Take me anywhere, not there." He held out the ticket again. The letters on it had changed. Beneath my name was another line. Destination, home. And under that, smaller, substitute required if passenger refuses. "Pick," he said. He held out a pencil that wasn't there a second ago. "Write a name, any name, someone to stand on the platform instead of you." I stared at the blank. My hand shook. The boy watched me, eyes bright with a greedy hope that made him look older than his face. I didn't write. I tore the ticket in half. The lights popped. Cold exploded in my sinuses like diving too fast. I fell backward through the rectangle of dark and hit wood hard enough to knock the breath from me. I was on the platform again on my back, looking up at stars that seemed too close. Wheat hissed. The road was a black ribbon. My watch read 9:19. The chalkboard in the store glowed in the dark like it had a light of its own. I walked to it, heart punching my ribs. The chalk letters were new. Friend, southbound, last platform, 9:17. And under it, one more line in a smaller, careful hand, substitute confirmed. My phone buzzed even though I had no service. A text slid onto the screen from my sister, time-stamped 9:17 p.m. "Almost there, saw your light. Why's your door open?" A second message came through, and then the screen went white. Somewhere out past the wheat, a whistle blew. Not far, not near, exactly at my house. I drove home too fast, and nothing on the road would get out of my way fast enough. When I skidded into my driveway, my porch light was still on. My door was still open. Inside, the air smelled like wet wool and old smoke. On my kitchen table lay a ticket, damp and punched neat twice. It had my sister's full name printed across it in tiny, perfect letters. From my hallway, a calm voice called, patient and sure, like it knew I would listen. Friend, last stop. Have you ever seen a fire that eats backward? Not racing across grass, not jumping roof to roof, just staying in one place like it's chewing its own tail, slow and patient, like it knows you'll watch. That's what I found in Whitney on a cold March afternoon, when the snow still held boot prints for days and the pines clicked in the wind like old bones. I've been taking back roads off 4-7, shooting photos of the old Sumter Valley Railway grade for a little history piece. The sky was colorless. The world smelled like pine pitch and cold iron. Past a bend, I saw it, a thin column of smoke lifting straight up beside a few weathered buildings. Whitney is mostly empty, one false front, a couple cabins, the ribs of a mill. But there was a house I didn't remember. 2 stories, clapboard gone gray, windows like black eyes. The smoke came from that house. No crackle, no hiss, just a slow, stubborn plume. What's burning in this weather? I said to myself, because nobody else was around. I pulled over near the sign that says Whitney like a whisper. The snow around the house looked clean, untouched, not even a rabbit trail. But the eaves had a faint orange glow, like a candle behind thin skin. The front door hung open. Heat should have rushed out, but the air at my face stayed cold enough to sting my teeth. An old ranch truck rolled up behind me. The driver cracked his window, breath bleeding into the wind. "Don't go inside," he said, like he'd been waiting to say it. "We've drowned that place more times than I can count. Foam, dirt, snow, it don't spread, it just stays, comes back." "How long?" I asked. He squinted at the eaves like they were telling him something. "Since '98 for sure, maybe longer. We stopped sending folks, it wants to keep itself." He drove on. The quiet came back like a blanket. I had no bars. I had a small shovel and a camera. I had that dumb itch that sends people closer to things that should be left alone. I stepped onto the porch. The wood had a greasy feel, like soot had soaked into it years ago and never let go. Inside, the smoke was thin and low, hugging the floor like fog. The air smelled not just of wood, but of hot pennies and something sweet and wrong, like burned syrup. In the front room, a mantel held a crooked family photo. The faces had bubbled under heat and slid like melted wax. A calendar on the wall froze on March 1998. The square for the 12th said potluck in a cheerful hand. The ceiling above me was black and breathed, expanding and settling as if the house had lungs. The fire wasn't a normal flame. It slipped along the baseboards like a bright worm, then folded itself into a knot and sank inside the wall. I could hear it travel soft, wet pops, a tiny sigh like someone murmuring through plaster. When I put my palm to the wall, a warmth pressed back that felt like another hand. "Hello," I said, because I'm that kind of idiot. My voice came back flat. From the stairwell, something answered with a small spring sound, like a bed in another room taking weight. I followed the soot-printed steps up. The banister had handprints burned into it, 5 little ovals, dark and perfect. They were too small for me. They led into a bedroom where the wallpaper had curled back like dead leaves. An iron bed stood on a floor of ash that didn't crunch when I stepped. The quilt on the bed was black and crisp, edges glowing dull red. The quilt rose and fell, slow and steady. The windows went from gray to mirror black. The door behind me shut with a soft click. Heat pressed my cheeks, then backed off like breath. The quilt moved, a shape turning under it, and a voice came out, not loud, not angry, just the sound of a coal when someone whispers across it. It said my full name from inside the bed. The sound used my mother's cadence, but not her warmth, like someone remembered how she spoke and carved the memory out of smoke. The quilt rose and fell, slow, as if whoever was under it had a very long, patient breath. "Who are you?" I asked. "How do you know me?" I kept the name, the voice said, gentle as embers. Lay down so I can see you. The doorknob behind me was cold enough to bite. My skin stuck to it the way a tongue sticks to ice. The window glass didn't show the snow outside anymore. It showed me, cheeks red, eyes wide, like the night had poured inside the pane and made a mirror. I could still see daylight around the edges, but the center was black. Little handprints bloomed in char on the wall, fresh, perfect ovals climbing toward the ceiling like something small was making its way up and out. The fire that had been sliding along the baseboards gathered itself, like a creature curling to spring, then changed its mind and flowed back toward the bed. Wallpaper that had peeled away curled back in, shy. I took a step closer before I knew I was moving. The heat wasn't a blast. It was a soak, the way a fever settles into the joints. The quilt had gone shiny with heat in places and matte in others like scales. Don't, I said to myself or to the bed, I don't know. Stay, the voice said. It didn't plead, it invited. Everybody leaves while the house is still hungry. I grabbed the edge of the quilt. It stuck to the mattress like skin, then gave with a soft sound. Underneath the bed was not springs and cotton. It was coals set in neat rows, red and black like ribs. Cooler patches shaped letters across them, my full name clear as if stitched by heat. And there, pressed into the coals, was a shallow, the exact shape of my body if I lay on my side. I swear it was the outline of my shoulder, my hip, the tilt of my chin. The pillow smoked. It smelled like hair. The quilt slipped from my fingers and slapped back. Sparks landed on my sleeves and sank without burning, like seeds going into soil. I turned for the window. I yanked a chair up and swung. When it hit the glass, the pane gave like water and swallowed the chair to the middle before pushing it back without a mark. My reflection moved a beat slow, like it was thinking about it. Lay down, the voice said from right under my chin now, like my pillow had lips. I'll keep burning if you keep still. That's the way. I ran for the stairs. The door that had been stuck peeled open under my hand like it had always been open. Smoke hugged the floor like fog and parted around my knees as if I belonged. The photo on the mantel had faces again, smooth, wrong ovals with no features. The calendar on the wall brightened in the dim. March, potluck on the 12th. The ink looked wet. Outside, the air was knife cold and clean. I jumped off the porch into the snow. It didn't hiss. The house stood gray and quiet with its thin plume like a needle up the sky. If you passed by then, you'd say nothing was wrong. In the driver's seat, my hands left perfect black whorls on the wheel. The soot wouldn't rub out. I drove with the window down, pretending the smell of hot pennies was coming from the road. At home, the smoke detector chirped one polite time. I pulled off my coat. On the inside lining, written in a neat smear of ash, were 4 letters from that Whitney calendar square, POTL. My mattress was warm in the middle. The springs gave a small, satisfied sound. In the dark, on my pillow, something used my full name again, soft as a coal, and asked, patient as winter, "Are you ready to lie down now?" Out there, the roads are empty, but the invitations never stop. If your glasses chime tonight, don't pull the invisible rope. If a whistle rises from the dark, don't check the time. And if your mattress warms in the middle, don't lie down when it says your full name. Golden still calls the living. Friend still runs on schedule. Whitney still burns itself into the shape of whoever listens. You made it back, but keep a light on and your doors locked. Check on the people you love. If any one of them texts at 9:17, let it ring. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.